We're back. We're back with Corrie Oberdin. This is part of the Departure Lounge, which is a 3-day series where we're bringing the folks that are adjacent and intertwined and integrated into the work that we're doing at Leaving Well, mostly to introduce you all to the work of these really incredible humans. Next up is Corrie Oberdin, and we're going to be talking about how you can announce the exit without torching your donor list. There's so much that goes into this with comms and comms teams, and I know from the work that I've done that so many comms teams are underfunded, not at capacity. They're asked to do so many things. Then you add in a departure, big transitions, and it just gets a little nutso. So Corrie, I'm going to turn it over to you. Please share first where people can find you.
Sure.
I'm one of those people that likes to go look at a website while I'm listening, and then we're just going to dive in and start chatting about all things.
Sure. My name is Corrie Oberdin. I am based in Omaha, Nebraska. You can find me at super easy www.corrieo.net. So it's literally my first name and my last initial .net. Super easy peasy.
I am going to stop you for a minute. It's CORRIEO.net.
It's like Carrie with an O.
Thank you. Okay,
Yeah.
carry on. Carry on, Corrie.
So it's so funny because, like, first of all, like, this question is so, I think, scary to people. Like, oh my God, guess what? So and so's leaving. And like everybody's like, what do we do? And then there's that like that office gif where like Michael Scott is like, oh my God, it's happening, and everybody's running around like crazy. I think sometimes that's what departures can feel like. And in reality, and I know you've been talking with other people, and I know that you've been you're going to have conversations over the next couple weeks about internal stuff and all of that good stuff. But one of the things I see is that like communications can often take the brunt of figuring it out, figuring out the message, figuring out the like calming people down, like petting their hair. Communications gets a lot of that, as does development. And let's be real, for a lot of people that I know, communications and development kind of sit together holding hands, if not in the same arena. The first thing that I really want to do, and it's work that you're doing, and ever since you've been doing it, I've been just like watching with delight and glee because it's acknowledging that people leave and getting that acknowledgement out there. Like there's this reflex in organizations where people are like, us, like you can't leave, right? Like, but we're not special. None of us are special. I think you said earlier, like, you're not at your first job. I'm certainly not at my first job. Like, we're not special. It's just something that I think, first of all, just acknowledging and preparing for as communications professionals, and not treating it like it's the end of the world is like step one. And then step two, and the question of like, how can you announce the exit without torching your donor list? That implies like that whole question, the framing like tells you something, right? And I've heard that question before as well. So like the framing implies that an organization's communications message or their fundraising message and or both are so tied to one person. And that is a problem, because if one person leaving torches your entire communications program or your entire donation program, like you've got a bigger problem. That's an organizational problem. And I mean, really, honestly, like most communication problems that I see from organizations that I work with are literally 3 organizational problems in a trench coat, like pretending to be a communication problem. They're not really communication problems. So like that's kind of just a thing. I remember talking to one of the executive directors that I'm working with, and you know, we were talking about how she does it all and how from a communication standpoint can we start moving things to other people. Not because she's thinking about leaving, but just because like how can you future proof your organization, right? So like future-proofing your organization doesn't start the day somebody says, I'm out, right? Like that's not it. I just kicked my computer, so sorry for the jiggle. But future-proofing your communications literally can start today, like today, right now. I mean, don't go off and post something today just because some lady on the internet said it. But if your communications right now, and you can do a little communications audit if you want, but if they revolve around one person, like your emails and donor letter only come from one person, or your social media posts only highlight the work of one, like our executive director was at blank, or like our leadership team was here, and you're not highlighting anyone else, like that's a problem waiting to happen. So I actually really recently did a social media strategy for uh, a client, and we looked at other people within their service sector. And I got extremely excited about a couple different channels that we were looking at. They had a strong voice, they had amazing materials. And then I looked at the dates on the posts, and they were all done like like they all stopped posting between 2023 and 2024. And from what I can tell by doing research within those organizations, like doing some like secret squirrel stuff, the person who was the talking head of the organization
Left.
Yeah.
That's something you and I talk so much about is
Yeah.
it's what everyone does is they stop their communications. That's
Yeah.
the most pivotal time to ramp them up.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So yeah, and you see this happening, and I'll talk about how you can maybe prevent that a little bit.
Yeah.
I'm going to say something really controversial. Actually, I'll do it now. I have talking points, but I'm going to go around. So one of the things that I recommended, and you've heard me talk about this like way too much, like both about my own work, like my own marketing, but you and I have talked about it with clients and everything else, is that organizations need to find their minimums, right? Because you're gonna have hard times. It might not be someone leaving, right? COVID was a hugely hard time for a lot of my clients. And we had to be okay with maybe not posting 5 days a week or sending an email every week or whatnot, because we didn't know what was going on. So we had to kind of pause, but we also communicated what we could. So one of the things I advocate for is finding your minimums and sticking to them. So even if there's a transition, even if there's a change, being okay, like maybe you normally post 5 times, and I'm just going to say like maybe you post 5 times a week, just ballpark. Being okay with posting twice a week, just for a short period of time, but not walking away. I do know, and I have empathy and sympathy for people who stop everything, because there's this feeling like maybe you don't want to step on the new leader's toes. Maybe you like literally don't know what to say. Maybe like when things are really bad, like you don't want to say anything at all for fear of not saying something. But a lot of times it's literally just like you don't want to step on people's toes. So you wait for direction from the new leader, or you wait from direction from your interim. But here's the thing, and this is where I'm going to say something slightly controversial, or I feel like it's controversial because it makes me slightly like, uh-oh. But your organization's communications commitment is not to your leadership team. It is not to your leadership. Your organization's communication commitment, say that 5 times fast, by the way, that's a big mouthful. I don't know why I came up with that phrase, but your commitment is to the people you serve and the people who support you. And sometimes those are different groups of people, and sometimes they are the same group of people, and sometimes they're a mix. But if your communications commitment is to your leadership team, your messaging is about ego. It's about your leadership team's ego. It's not about your mission. So, having those minimums and being okay with communicating because your people need to hear from you. Your leader, your exec may have left, your executive director may have left, your director of development or somebody, your programs are still happening. You're still serving people. You've got to talk about that stuff. Otherwise, you just like Homer Simpson your way into the bushes and people don't know what's going on.
Well, and the other thing to that point, Corey, is how beautiful could it be if during that transition, the communication outward and internal to the people who support the
Yes.
people you serve, what you just
Yes.
said, was super honest of like, we actually
Yes.
don't know.
Yes.
We don't know what this
Yes.
is look like. And here's
Yep.
what we are committed to is, like you
Yes.
said, with your minimums, we are
Yeah.
committed to still sharing what we're doing. We're still going to elevate the really beautiful program opportunities we have. We're still going to X, Y, and Z. I just
Right.
think I agree with you that it is controversial, but it should not be.
Yeah.
Just like people leave, people freak
Yeah.
out about
Yeah.
that. Well, it's the reality. Okay.
So real.
And I think that's the same. I also think, Corey, about the poor comms teams, and not to like pat them on the head, but they're often tasked with things that are secrets until it's going to be made normal. And so I think there's something to be said to
Mhm.
protecting the people who are responsible to communicate in
Yes.
those moments. Yeah.
Yes. One of the things that's really interesting is there's an old joke, particularly in social media management, which I have been in for like a magillion years, um, is that the social person is always the last to know.
Mm,
Now, in nonprofit work, the social person and the comms person are sometimes the same
right.
person, or
Right.
else they're in a room together. And what often happens, and like this is more of a business side of things, but what I often see happen, or the old joke is like, oh, we're launching a new like product today, and I got called into a meeting about it to tell me that I needed to come up with a strategy for the product that we're launching, right? Like that happens in the business world, but it also happens in the nonprofit world as
Sure
well.
does.
So I think that like it's not patting us on the head, but it's like making sure that transparency goes both ways, right?
Well,
Yes.
and there's so much to be learned too. I love that you said that communication is actually not meant to serve leadership, because often leadership, again, controversy, is the farthest away from actually what communication needs to be when it goes
Yes.
out. So if you're not trusting your PR, your comm strategist with the language, then you've got
Mhm.
another problem. That goes beyond what are your donors going to think about the transition.
3 organizational problems in a trench coat. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also think that you there's a piece about transparency though that I do want to talk about, because I think sometimes when we say the word transparency in communications, there's this fear that we're just going to share everything,
Mm.
right? Like, oh, you know, Debbie didn't leave because she's moving on to other things. Like Debbie left because she hit perimenopause and got really hot all the time. And like she just ran screaming from the building, right? Like that. I mean, I've been there. But,
We are Debbie.
we all have, yeah. But we don't have to be fully like when we say transparent, transparent is really more,
Not a tell.
hey, right, we're figuring things out.
Yeah.
This is, so and so did a great job. We've got a new person. We're excited, but like also we're figuring a couple things out. Like, and that can be okay.
Yeah.
I think there's this idea that everything needs to be perfect to say something. Like we got to have everything. We got to have it all. We got to have it all approved. We got to have it all done. Um, and it's not about being perfect in your messaging. It's also not about being like perfectly transparent, I think. It is about, you know, being open.
Mhm.
And I think like you said, like we're figuring it out. We're trying to do X and Y. And I've seen some organizations who have gone through change, whether it's leadership change or other change, and they've had such a good, like I'm thinking about one organization here in town, so I don't want to like name who they are, but like they went through some changes and their social did such a good job of just being like, we're still here, we're still showing up, we're also figuring it out. And like that grace, not only they were able to give it to like and share that with their audience, but their audience gave it back to them,
Yeah.
right? So I think sometimes the more real we are versus the more perfect we are, that can be extremely, extremely helpful.
Yeah.
I do know there's sensitivities around because, people leaving involves people, and it involves people's feelings.
Yeah.
And that involves not just people's feelings, but people's reputations and all of that other stuff.
Legacy, it brings up and it also brings up all the past departures that have not been identified and resolved and
Yes,
navigated.
yes, yes. One thing I wanted to note actually on the don't let one person be the face of your marketing. If we go back to that and you maybe you've looked at your marketing and you're like, oh no, like we're in this, like if so and so walked today, we would be
Right.
in big trouble. One of the things that I really recommend is like, other than finding your minimums, is like at making sure you're highlighting it as many people in the organization as you can,
Yeah.
right? If your organization has only 5 people, highlight all those 5 people. If your organization, and I have clients who only have like 5 people or 3 people or whatever, but I also have clients who have 50 people, and like bridging those people in, there's 2 things that does. One, it takes the heat off of that one person for having to shoulder the burden of like doing the job of the whole organization. The second thing that it does is I like to believe that people learn about nonprofits, especially in your missions, through different entry points.
Mm,
And what interests me isn't necessarily going to be what interests you.
yep.
And what interests, someone else. So by showcasing your different team members or the work that's happening in different ways, you give people different entry points into your organization. And it's not this like this cult of personality that's like just one person runs the show.
Right.
And I think that's helpful for departures, because if you think about some organizations where there was like, think about like the org that was run as a cult of personality, and I think we can all kind of think of one. When that person leaves, it's a big deal. Now think about an organization where you might know the work they do, and you might know their executive director or like one of their program directors, but you're way more familiar with, I don't know, their program manager or the person who runs their
Or the
classes.
frontline outreach worker.
Yeah, an outreach worker. That's a shared burden, that's a shared understanding, and people, I think it's less of a big deal and it inspires less panic.
Which
Um,
also then goes to the fact, and we won't have enough time to talk about the development side of the donor piece of it,
yeah,
but every person who interacts with your brand is a donor. And so
yes,
if you're interacting in that way, and if I'm getting to know Susan, the outreach worker, and I'm getting to know Jose, the frontline staff person,
yes,
my
yes,
gosh, yeah, it's so much more than just the folks that sit in the philanthropic seats
yes, yep,
that we've given them with the big P. Yeah, I think that's so
yeah.
important.
Do you know, there's a couple, one of my favorite organizations to volunteer with, Rise, which I know you also do. One of my favorite things about them, they have an annual giving day, and I give every year. And every year I get a phone call, not from a development person. I get a phone call from somebody who's benefited from the program, or somebody who's working in the program, or somebody whose job is impacted by my donation. And that means so much
So
more.
much.
And it's shared effort. So I know we didn't have time to touch a lot on the donor side, but all communication really is donor communication. So the more you can spread the work around, spread that wealth around,
Yeah.
spread your organizational voice around, I think the better off you'll be.
Well, and that piece that you just said, spread the organizational voice around. I cannot tell you how many times there's been not an argument, but a struggle around, but who's going to be the signer? Who's going to sign off on this email? Meaning, for
Yes.
those of you that aren't familiar, whose name is at the bottom
Yep.
of the email that goes out?
Mhm.
It is so beautiful and so powerful to let that be rotated amongst your team. So if
Yes.
one email is from your program director, the next email
Mhm.
is from someone on the construction team. Like,
Yes.
how beautiful and
Yes.
powerful is that? Yeah. That
Mhm.
also, can you talk a little bit about, this time goes so fast.
I know.
Can you talk a little bit about, like, talk to the comms person, the social media person? Like, how do they kind of put a bubble around the knowledge transfer of what they know and what they're doing, because they also will be leaving.
Yes. So I have an entire workshop that I legit just gave last week, and I got talked into giving it again. I don't know when the date is. I think I'm going to wait till school's back in session because summertime is hard. But it's called Getting a Backup for Your Social Media Person. Because as a person who ran social media for a very long time, and you hear this often, I posted stuff literally from a hospital bed, literally after I had had a child. I was posting stuff. We're not going to talk about my boundaries right now, but from an organizational standpoint, that is also an organizational failure. So one of the things I advocate is that you, my comms friends, I'm going to just look right at you at the screen. I don't know if, there we go. I want you to document what you do. I want you to share what you do, like your process, your actual whole process. And I want it to be documented, and I want someone else in your organization to know where it is. There's more than that, but those two things will start, because it actually does two things for you. One, it's going to help you if you get hit by a car or you break your ankle roller skating. True story. You think it's not going to happen, but it is. But also, you deserve a vacation. So having your process documented will help you there. Number two, a lot of times my comms friends are scared to document their processes, because what if everybody realizes they can do it themselves? It's so easy, but here's the reality of the situation. I've been doing this for 17 years. Every single time I have documented my processes and shared them within an organization, everybody's like, I didn't know you did that much. That's
And people are like,
terrifying.
oh,
Yeah, like, no, thank you. Like, not it, right? So documenting can also show what you do in preparation for you leaving, in preparation for an emergency, right? Like, because emergencies happen. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. I started thinking about it right after 2022. One of my clients had a bunch of people leave because they had post-COVID burnout. And we were suddenly left with like, okay, how do we rethink about this? And documenting that process and having more people who know how things are done was like step one. And I became really passionate about helping people figure that out, because we all leave.
Well, I love it. And I also love to give the helpful hint. I talk with my clients about this all the time. You can broach this conversation with your manager without them freaking out by just saying, for example, I watched this LinkedIn Live today, and this
Yes.
woman named Corrie said I should document my work. So I'm going to, and I want to just make sure you know where it is. That can
Yes.
start the conversation and really support
Mhm.
even organizational change, one person at a time. And I
Yes.
also love that you said, keep it simple, document what you
Mhm.
do, make sure one
Mhm.
other person knows where it is. You don't
Yep.
have to necessarily jump right into cross training. You don't have to jump into, and we'll have a session, I believe it's on Tuesday the 14th, about your CRM and your passwords and all of that kind of
Nice.
thing.
Oh,
That's
good.
the next piece, right? Is like, how do you share
Yep.
how? What else? I'm going to stop talking on that
Okay.
thread. We could go along forever. We have got 5 minutes left. What
Okay.
else do you want to talk about, Corey?
What else do I want to talk about? Well, I think with the communications and with worrying about people leaving or dealing with it, one of the things that I often see that we haven't yet talked about is making sure that, again, I used the term at the start, like future proofing your communications, right? So this isn't necessarily one, I don't want you to go and like be like, I'm gonna change everything. Like, don't do that. That's not gonna help anybody. However, if you are maybe like, oh, maybe we should start tweaking and future proofing our communications, like how might you go about that, right? Because it's one thing for me to sit in my house in Omaha in my office and be like, you need to future proof, right? Well, what does that look like? So the first thing you can do is like really audit your content, right? Audit your social, audit your emails, audit your donor letters and your donor communications, and really see, are we presenting one person or are we presenting multiple? If you're like, I'm presenting multiple, good job. You might be doing it in one space and not another, right? It's easier in emails. it's easiest sometimes in donor letters because they don't come out as often, but it's harder on social maybe. So you might want to be like, okay, we got to work on social. Don't try to do everything at once, right? Pick one thing per quarter to work on. Maybe it's, okay, this quarter we're going to work on email. Next quarter, what is it, quarter 3 now? So quarter 4, we'll work on donor letters. And then quarter 1, 2027, we're going to work on social and work on our social messaging. And think about who else in your organization can share the communications load, right? Think about who does what. Think about who sends you the most content. That person is asking, maybe not to be featured, right? But like they're asking for their work to be acknowledged.
Yeah.
Think about how you present things. Think about, and the last thing I always like to tell people is look for the gaps. So a lot of times when I meet clients, I will have a picture of what they do based on their website, their social, their email, whatever public stuff I can ferret out. And then I get in the room with them and they're like, actually, we also do this. Or, hey, we actually are doing this. Or we launched this program or we do this. And like routinely, I'm like, where is this stuff?
Right.
So it sounds big, right? But a lot of times there are other small things that you do that can humanize your program and broaden the scope of your communications and give people, I think the key is sharing the depth and breadth of what you do versus kind of a one-time thing. And I think when we go back to the original question, how do I leave or how do I manage a departure without torching that donor list? I would even use the term like goodwill of the people I'm communicating with.
Yep.
How do you do that? It's really about having a more broad communications program. And by broad, I don't mean get on
All
X and
platforms.
LinkedIn and
Right.
TikTok and all. That's not what I mean. I mean, talk about everything you do. Don't just talk about like one thing. And again, that's that pinpoint of
Yep.
those different places that people can get into. Yeah, and also to my fellow comms and social and email people, like also you're doing okay. Like I just want to tell you that you're doing okay. You're doing a good job, I promise. But and actually I'm not going to use the word but. You're doing a good job, I promise. And there are things you can do to advocate so that your communications are future proofed. And just using the word future proofed versus I'm worried, going up to your boss or your manager and going, yo, I'm worried you're going to leave. Like, hey, I'm thinking about how we might future proof our communications. Like that's a phrase you can use.
Yep. Well, and that's the thing. It's really about not having people freak out about the eventual departure, which we all will leave, but it's
Yes.
also about how can you get buy-in of the folks
Yeah.
that are decision makers. And that future-proofing concept is brilliant in terms of
Yes.
having a conversation that people don't freak out about.
Yes. And also another one, a random one that I like to, especially on the side of my comms people who might be leaving, or even like, are you getting ready to have a baby or something like that? Talking about future proofing is also it's a discussion about minimizing risk. And it's also a discussion about saving money, right? Because if you don't future proof your communications and then someone breaks a leg and you have to bring someone like me in, I love it, but it will cost your organization money in the long run. So future proofing is good.
Well, and I also love, this has come up in all the conversations we've had so far. If you are a decision maker and you have control over the budget, add a line item on your budget for coverage for your people. Oh my gosh,
Yes.
it's so simple. If you're a funder and you're watching this, reach out to your grantees and find out what kind of transition support, transition readiness they could use for funding, because that could be something that you fund. There's so many ways that we can be better about the reality that people leave. Comms is a big piece of it. Corrie, you are found at corrieo.net. People can sign up for your email newsletter on your website. They can find out about the workshop. Thank you so much for this
Thank
conversation.
you.
All of these conversations could be 3 times as long, and we still wouldn't touch all the things, but thank you for joining me today for the
Thank you so
Departure
much. This is lovely. Thank you.
Lounge. Thank you.